Kristen?
Well, kind of along with what Melody was talking about, when we were discussing the fact that there was no negative forces, then I wanted to, the mind wanted to question, what is it that caused this negativity that's here? And I kept feeling like that little fable about Adam and Eve was something that was given to this garden to just give them a little picture of like Adam could represent the positive nature of man and maybe Eve the negative nature, and really isn't it ignorance that causes the vehicles to have weaknesses and just ignorance through lack of experience and they haven't learned the lessons in the areas where they have these weaknesses.
Chris, they're just human.
And they're just primitive.
These are human characteristics.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do, all of us, we're trying to slowly raise them up where they have where those characteristics have been overcome. By that time, they will be ready to step into the next level. But see, it's these characteristics that are characteristics of these vehicles, of these humans on this garden. And this is what helps them to grow. So
these little legends and these little analogies, because they're still at a superstitious level of understanding. Now, but to correct the thing that happened there, the evil wasn't in Eve, and Adam didn't represent the good. The evil was in the serpent that Eve accepted, and so did Adam as it was offered to him. To get the understanding right, the evil that was done was the yielding. It wasn't that one was evil and the other was good, and one was influenced by the evil. The evil, even in that illustration, was something altogether different. It came in and possessed one, and then used that one to try to influence the other one. So it's not that Eve was worse than Adam because the serpent entered Eve first. Even in that illustration. You see what we're saying?
I guess I was just feeling like when they gain the knowledge of ways to the next level, that knowledge will be what will bring them up. And that's what we're doing here now, sending back to our strain. But it was like ignorance is the negative force. It's the enemy. It's what keeps them.
Well, wisdom is also the negative force. There's just as much evil in wisdom as there is in wisdom. Doesn't mean that what you know is right. Now, it's true that from the next level standpoint, they would say it was stupid to take that kind of knowledge. But even at this level of primitive development, a lot of times it is the most brilliant of what humans would call brilliant who are the most evil. In other words, so you can't say that ignorance is synonymous, even though the next level would say it was pretty ignorant of them to develop their brain power and their effort in that type of wisdom, because that's only going to end up destroying themselves.
Well, I guess my picture of wisdom is just lack of understanding of how to apply the ways at the next level. That's wisdom to me. Like, they understand to be helpful, let's say, but being helpful in a human way isn't the same thing as being helpful in a next level way.
Well, it changes. Every step of the way toward next level, it changes. What's appropriate in a kind of a kindness was like the kind of humanism that we're talking about, that it's time for this society to rise above. It's appropriate now for them to develop a new way of caring and a new type of conduct. But each step is a different appropriate set of standards. Do you follow this?
Yes.
Okay. Mercodi?
I have a question regarding the depth of thinking.
The what?
Depth of thinking. I wanted to understand it a little bit better because up until this point in time, I had always thought that we were basically supposed to maintain our vehicle's thoughts on a level of dealing with the normal everyday kind of thing. That would keep us, we stuck to procedures that keep us on the track. And when you mentioned that thing at Gold Beach, of you can see something in front of you, but you know that it's not real. That kind of thinking is what I started moving into, but I was taking it in a human way, let's say 9 years ago. But when Link thinks of something now, are you saying that you can look at something, still maintain everyday thoughts on one hand, but still you don't have to keep your thoughts on that level? Because I don't care too much to keep thoughts on this level anymore. You get to be really that suffering you talked about. I'd like to have the thoughts up on this level and still be able to maintain this level.
You can.
And it's like a...
We do just as menial tasks as you do. We have just as many procedures to go by as you do. And yet we have to be totally preoccupied with pulling. Now, I'll back up and because the way I started off this might have made you feel some embarrassment about where you have been to this point, and whether or not you were preoccupied with pulling or you were trying to maintain yourself by just doing procedures and keeping the proper countenance and so forth. And I tried a moment ago to say that might have been, or the time is now for you to concentrate more on pulling. But you can keep a higher perspective. Now, I've got to go back to what you said a moment ago about seeing the river and not knowing the river. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
Because you can slip into what the spiritualists call the river. The spiritualists say it isn't a river; it's a flow of energy. It's and all this stuff that's garbage. Now that's not what T was talking about. She wasn't saying I didn't see the river just because I saw the water. She was saying I couldn't understand all the aspects of like how the current would come in from the ocean, and yet I know that the current was coming here, and it was also housing all these salmon, and it was, in other words, she was trying to see all the literal, real aspects of the river instead of just the water. You see what we're saying? But she wasn't trying to tune into it was a force, and it was that. Now, Presley, you said something about the force of evil when we said it really isn't a force. Actually, it is a force. It is a living force. It isn't evil. It's negative. And in a sense, you say like it's a type of ignorance, only ignorance because they haven't learned and they may never learn, no matter how smart they get. In other words, because that negativity can grow. Okay, now, but there is a force field that we would identify as negative, and a force field that we would identify as positive, just like a magnet has a push and a pull to it. And when you are all positive, you have to protect yourself in a very different way than you would if you were divided between negative and positive. Because you will also come around negatives that will unconsciously try to let your positive be the object of their negativity. You have to protect it. It's almost as if to prove to them, I'm not positive. Not me. I'm not very positive. And it's just a way that you're kind of shielding yourself. And I don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But T and I can go into areas, and you can go into areas where you can be in such a good place and radiate such positiveness that someone who might walk through there at that moment who is radiating all negative, if there's anybody in the place he would throw something at, if he's compelled to throw it, he'll throw it at you. Because it's the natural vacuum of that force. to go. So it is a forced field that we don't understand very well, and we don't really need to understand it very well. But you have to protect yourself. And the more positive that you become, it's like that negativity is almost attracted to you if you let down your guard. You've got to keep, I tell you what it is, it's like the magnet that you've got to spread that positive all the way around the magnet. You've got to keep that positive all the way around the and you've got to keep it in a way that it is repelling negative instead of attracting it. And it's not easy to do. It's hard to do. It's hard for us to do. We can't help but be thrown in circumstances where negative force is thrown at us. And it just catches us off guard, and we think, good night, they wouldn't have done that to anybody else. But they do it to us, and they don't know why they do it to us. They don't even know they did it to us sometimes. So it is a force. There is a negative force.
I want to interrupt you on any questions. No, I want to tell you something that I've been given to share with you all because of what Anioti had brought up. First, I'll preface it a little bit by saying that the next level is very protective of these vehicles, of our vehicles, because of the position that they're placed in, because of the lessons that have been given to you all. Now, it's been made very clear to me that everything that we have said to you, there has been no contradiction. Absolutely no contradiction. And when you get back to the next level, you will understand what I mean at this time. So if your vehicles ever throw this at you, you can say, I'm sorry, but you don't know what I know. And I will know fully, I will fully understand it. But it was even clear in my mind that when we told you were students, you were students. And in other words, it's been made very clear that nothing is a contradiction, and it's almost an insult to them to even accept it in that way. Can you understand that? So maybe this was given because some are suffering from it. I don't know, but whatever it is, hopefully it can be helpful to you. And they feel very apologetic to our vehicles to have them go through the feeling of their being causing you all to feel like we have been contradictory to you. Do you understand that? In other words, if you all could get enough of your next level mind in to feel the next level, when they protect you, like I felt a strong protection at that time for us, because it hurt me. I mean, it hurt me to think that we could put you all under the or place you in a position where you have to suffer from things that we say to you. And that would cause you to be think it was contradictory. Can you understand that? And the next level immediately, which they have done millions of times to me, have come in immediately and protected me from the hurt, because it wasn't the kind of hurt that needed to be to have happened. Can you understand that? And in other words, there are a lot of hurts that need to occur for suffering, but this one wasn't necessary. And it was made very clear to me that everything that has been given to you was right at the time. At the time. Okay? So remember that if you ever have that battle at that time.
Yeah, and say one other thing on that. You know, while he was talking, I had a little picture of when we were in the campground with you, and we were talking to you about how you were students. And have you ever thought of who we were talking to? Yes. Mr. Ruddy?
The mind,
Talking to what?
the mind,
Come on.
the human mind.
The mind of the vehicle. Get that part of your vocabulary. The mind of the vehicle. Yes, we were talking. It's almost, sometimes I picture that your next level minds grabbed hold of the arms of these vehicles and took them around and said, now come on, you're going to go follow these two, and you're going to listen to them. And you sat them down, and at times the vehicle would get up, and you'd say, no, you sit right back down there, and you listen to them. And I feel like a lot of times we were preaching to the minds of the vehicle, because the vehicle had to have a certain degree of permissiveness and reception before the next level minds could come in. Now, I even wonder if in Black Hawk is the first time that a next level mind came in that we said, you're from the next level. I know you. You're not students from here, because we weren't talking to minds of vehicles that were under the protective or were under the obedience of your next level mind. We were talking to next level minds. Now, it might have happened prior to that, but at that point, it was made clear to us that that next level mind was coming in, and we couldn't ignore it any longer. That it was next level minds we were dealing with, not offsprings of this garden, plants of this garden. Because if we had previously been talking to offsprings of this garden, wasn't it appropriate? It certainly wasn't contradictory. Aren't you glad we talked to the minds of your vehicles? So that you could get more in? We're sure glad you kept your a strong grip on their elbows and sat them down and said, now you listen, because I'm going to get right on in there. You're going to open that head enough that I can speak and that I can be seen, so that my teachers can recognize me and see me for who I am instead of for seeing you. Can you not see that? Janody?
With what you were saying, I can remember how you used to tell us that we have to strip down all of we have to get down to zero.
Down to the nitty-gritty.
Our next level mind could come in and started on the other side of the hourglass.
Well, the funny thing is that T unconsciously was so preoccupied with, and I say unconsciously because of the words chosen, it had to be, wasn't conscious in the vehicle. But T's mind was still coming in at such an early point as to say, you've got to get more minded. And yet she was talking to next level mind from the outset. But you were talking to getting cooperation out of the mind of the vehicle so that next level mind could come in. Do you follow that? And of course, any bit of comprehension that you had that was beyond what that vehicle could have comprehended in the absence of your next level mind, at the point it exceeded that kind of information and comprehension was when the next level mind was coming in. And then the next level mind had to start entering it into the printer, had to start putting it in the brain and having you remember it. Do you follow that? When the information was different from anything that you could have heard anywhere else, different from what you could have heard with anything that I could think of. Do you follow what we're saying? More advanced than could have been heard anywhere else. Then the next level mind was in comprehending, because that advanced information was not being given to the mind of the vehicle. That information was being given to the next level mind. You were just trying to get the the vehicle to be a cooperative funnel, tube, receptacle, so that next level mind could say, oh, yes, and start to move in, and then start to move in further.
Yesterday, I think it was yesterday, we were driving like we've been doing for the past 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden our brains, and it might be even day before yesterday because I'm not sure if it was yesterday. We usually change drivers every hour, and I still can't remember whether it was a half hour or on the hour that we were changing because of what happened. And I'm telling you this for your own peace of mind, not because we want to impress you in any way, but because it might happen to you. But we were, I was driving, and Doe was the passenger or navigator, and Doe said, you've been driving 15 minutes, and I had been driving, and he said, but he looked at the clock, and it was, what he saw in his mind wasn't what it was.
I looked at the clock, but I saw a different time on the clock.
And I looked at it and saw what he saw. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And it wasn't, it lasted for several minutes, our mental state.
Yeah.
And after it cleared up, we pushed through, and after it cleared up, we realized both of us were seeing the clock wrong. It wasn't even close to the time that we thought it was.
I said, you started driving at 3:55, and therefore you've been driving 16 minutes.
But you thought it was.
And it wasn't quite yet 3:55. And I said that by looking at the clock.
In other
He
words,
looked at it and agreed with me.
But then after the mental confusion cleared away, then I said, but no, I couldn't have been driving because it's not even that time yet.
We were seeing it at 16 minutes into the next hour, and it was still 5 minutes before that hour.
Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because after that happened, I told Doe, I said, boy, some of our mind came in because the next level always seems to work on the clock for us. You know, the clock will either get off or our watch
or it appears to be.
Something will happen, or maybe it's our mind coming in
right.
that it will affect. Who knows what it is.
Throws us off.
But I told Doe, I said, well, we sure got the mind in at that time, so I'm hoping that when we have a meeting that you all will pull it out.
Right.
And that's when we called you that last evening, wasn't it? We told you all to listen to the tape and start thinking about the questions because it didn't come with knowledge. But it was obvious that mind came in, which caused the brain.
It's like getting an injection of medicine, but it hasn't gone anywhere or hasn't translated into anything until X amount of time later. But we feel like we got something then, but it didn't come into our conscious mind. And that's why T said, well, when you talk to them last night, get their minds busy on pulling, because we've got to find out what it was that came in this evening. See, this was at 4:55 when I insisted that it was 5:16, and by looking at the clock,
What time did you say it was?
4:55. It was supposed to. According to the clock, it was
43 minutes.
Oh, was it?
That's what confused me.
Well, that's when it was first said it.
Yeah,
First said it was at 4:43, but I was convinced that it was 5:16. It was 4:43, and I was convinced it was 5:16, and that she'd been driving. That she started 5 minutes early driving, and she had been driving 16 plus 5. She'd been driving 21 minutes. You see, because she started at 4:55. Wait, it wasn't 4:55 yet. But now what happened actually was that she started driving at 4:25. That's right. She started driving 5 minutes early because we were changed on the half hour. Now, what actually happened is she started driving 4
It's
times.
really crazy. But what I'm saying is, when you, this was a strong dose because it affected our brain.
We lost
We lost, it was just,
touch.
but then
We giggled a lot, but we're lucky we didn't run into it.
we stayed on the road, but if it should happen to you, don't just try to get through, because we pushed through and realized what time it was and what time we started driving and so on, So, in other words, it's only a momentary thing, and but it will mentally confuse you.
You remember I telling you once when we first left, when we first took these vehicles out of Houston at midnight on New Year's Eve, and we drove to this place, and all of a sudden we were going in the opposite direction? Do you remember I telling you we couldn't figure out how we were going in the opposite direction? Now, do you see what was happening?
He's also driving with you.
And also drove, and as far as I knew, I was asleep. I slept for 30 minutes while I was driving. 30 minutes I slept while I was driving. I mean, didn't know anything. And I couldn't, and I thought, well, that's pretty neat that you can do that.
Crazy things have happened. But anyway, when you get more mind in, you're confused a little bit. Don't worry about it; it'll pass. We ought to stop this thing.
Okay.
Let's get Jim on. He always runs.
Some we've missed. We'll have to catch you next time.
Well, just when you were talking about we were trying to get our minds into our vehicles more at the beginning, and I was remembering, this is silly, but I was remembering at Gold Beach when you were saying try to establish contact with the Heavenly Father, and what that really meant was, for the vehicle standpoint, that the vehicle was trying to get the mind.
Right. Absolutely. That's right. It was like saying, stick out your hand and shake hands with that next level mind and let it come on in.
And your next level mind, we've never told you this, but we know this. And the only reason we didn't tell you because it hasn't come up. I mean, it wasn't that we wanted to keep it secret. But your next level mind could do things for you. Remember, it was walking around holding your arm.
That's right.
And
it could see over the hill, and it could run ahead and have somebody do something to help you out a little bit here.
It's your parking space. But once you get more mind into your vehicle, it isn't as easy to do it. You understand this?
It still has a certain amount of extension.
Right.
Even now, your next level
Like
mind.
today, I knew that a police car was coming over the hill. Mm-hmm. But, I had no reason to, I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I mean, it was, what is that?
Well, rain.
Rain.
And we tell each other that we know that that's happening, and because it's fun to share what the mind knows ahead of the brain. So there is some extension there from the vehicle.
Was that also part of those times when we were moving and it felt like we had help during this, we couldn't
You got a lot of help. Well, Jane Odie was running all over the place trying to help out. Your next level mind was running all over the place trying to make things work a little smoother so you could get going.
Well, when we first started awakening, we told you how we moved that piano up and down the steps and everything. And how we got it up those steps, I don't know.
Or packed that on New Year's Eve, and packed that truck with things that I can't imagine could go in that truck. Or that, what was it?
Oh, you mean right, when we were moving the things
Yes.
out of the... Oh,
Moving the things. It was earlier that same night, wasn't it?
yes.
Yes, it was earlier that same night. We packed the truck, and I can't imagine that we could pack that truck the way it was like somebody took the things from you and put them in place and knew that there would be exact fits here and exact fits. There was no work to it. It was like taking out and throw it in. No, we didn't throw it in. It was just like walk there and like we were puppets. on a string. And like our next level minds had us on a string and had it all figured out and knew exactly what to do because they were so pleased that we were finally going to get on the way at midnight that night. So we got super help. Super help.
I wonder if Parkody and Lagodi were helping out.
Huh?
I wonder if Parkody and Lagodi's minds.
Oh, we're helping us move. No, they were probably helping them with the problems they had at that time.
So we'll just do this.
This may be inappropriate.
We can turn the tape off.
Yeah.
That's good consent.
Since knowing what we know now.
Felt like because we were having fun with you and because we said we were going to celebrate the next level during this season, I think that we were getting caught up in an anticipation of something happening unconsciously. And something may have happened, but you were looking forward to something more major happening, like a ramp. And I feel that unconsciously some of you gave in to being disappointed that we were still here. I know that tried to attack me, and of course I always have, or I frequently get attacks of that I have to work against. And I know that you have, or some of you have to deal with that. I wondered if the caroling thing didn't kind of if it didn't finally, when it didn't end up in something really exciting, or maybe like also we said you could put some on tape, and probably you listen to the tape and thought, good night, how awful that sounds, or you thought, well, I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this anymore. We did this before Christmas, and why don't we drop it? And we're not saying that you can't drop it. We just said if you wanted to go on a little bit. But if you were going to go on, you ought to just like work on one song, and when you decide to stop working on it, then forget it, because we're not trying to develop any skills in that way, but we still want to help you examine the things that you permitted to pull the mouth down during that period. I don't know that we need to. Do you want to open to any more of them to see if they've come up with it? Whatever you say. Generally, what you want to say?
Well, for me, it was kind of hard to see the end of the Carolyn Path, but I enjoyed it. And
You hated to see them?
yeah, I might be doing something in there, especially because we were going to practice sort of first or something, and then we stopped practicing along so we could listen to length page. The vehicle was bad because the task was ended. I didn't really want it to end or something.
Could have been subconscious. What do you say, Rudy?
I noticed that when we started the Carolyn task, there was something different in the way this vehicle felt. I don't know if, it was like things were stimulated that I hadn't dealt with in a while, and I don't really know why. Just seemed to be fluctuations in its vibrations, and I tried to be aware of highs and lows, and I've had the lesson numerous times where being too high and then going on the downer afterwards, and I've tried to work against that this time, and maybe I went too far in the other direction. But I did notice back when we started the Carolyn task, that's when something felt different about the vehicle to me. That, and I think everybody on my string overcharged for Christmas and holiday themselves.
They did what?
I think everybody on my string overdid it on their budget for Christmas, and now they're kicking themselves.
They're worried. What did you say, Tim?
You don't have to worry about payments.
Not those
Just because they're on your string.
I was just going to add that I felt like maybe what happens in this vehicle is
something to the effect like when Christmas and New Year's comes around, it's like, to this vehicle, it's like another year has passed, and yet there's still things that I feel like I haven't conquered, or, you know, it's probably not the next level mine that's upset about it.
Mm.
Maybe it is, I don't know.
No, it isn't.
But anyway, the vehicle looks back over the year and says, oh, there's all these things, the whole year's gone by.
No, that clever mind wouldn't look at things because it's the end of a year and
Well,
that kind of thing. Only the vehicle would. You know, the
Even Christmas.
parents of the vehicles that you're using usually don't let themselves think of the negative things up until Christmas. And then the day of after Christmas Eve, they start saying, only if so-and-so had been here. You know, I wasn't going to let myself be upset. But now that it's passed, if only, you know, and your vehicles, of course, are attacked to a degree by that. But you should be so accustomed to the kind of attacks that you have dealt with from vehicular relationships that you know how to work with them by now.
Well, in a sense, we prepared you for that, for these thoughts, for after Christmas. That little, I am a member of King, the next level, this little thing you say. Because every time you get a thought in of someone in the past, you shouldn't even let it come in. Because those thoughts are only of the vehicle, and you want only the thoughts of the next level, or your next level mind, to come into your vehicle. So in a sense, the next level gave you that to protect you for what was ahead for you. And it isn't too late now, but you can start doing it. No, it's bothering you still. We don't want you to feel like because you didn't get a big gold star on the gift that you bought that you failed. Because each of you got a star in a lot of ways, but just because the item that you purchased wasn't something we could use in the craft doesn't mean that you failed, because your mind gave you what you needed to learn from this lesson. In other words, your mind did it. And if you needed to expose something, then I'm sure your mind exposed it.
What you want to know is the shortcomings, so that you won't be short in those areas. And anytime you learn of them, then you're having an opportunity to get ahead of the game. We don't want to linger on this any longer. So raise your cheek and raise your spirits, and let's go to some questions of the kind that we were the kind we're trying to get you to pull on.
Melody had her hand up a lot last night, and we missed her. Do you still have your question, Melody?
I don't know how important it is, but it occurred to me several weeks ago that if the mind of the vehicle is chosen because it deserves to be able to participate in this experience, then for those people or those members of the next level who started on this path and didn't finish, does the mind of that vehicle share the responsibility of not succeeding in the past? Because the next level believes that they also, that they would cooperate, I guess.
No, they simply don't benefit as much as they would have benefited by seeing it through. But they're not, they haven't fallen down on the task like the next level mind has. You see, in other words, they don't really have any embarrassment or shame or lack of accomplishment. The mind of the vehicle doesn't. Only the mind of the next level. And the mind of the vehicle simply does not get the experience it would have had had the mind of the next level seen to it that control was gained, the strategy and control was gained so that they could follow through. complete the task.
They learned from their mistakes. In other words, they learned, I'm talking about the ones who assisted in picking the vehicle. They learned what to look for in a vehicle and also what to look for in the mind of the next level that was going to be going on that task again. In other words, what they do, they evaluate everything, and they evaluate the deficiency in the mind, the next level mind, and also what the vehicle, what would make the vehicle more cooperative, so that the next time they have a task like this, then they may pick a next level mind that may be a little bit older, but had more experience, or whatever it is that they decide that mind needs in order to make it stick with the vehicle. Now they are learning a lot from you all in regards to that, and because not necessarily from us, because we told you we had this vehicle from the very beginning, and they will learn in some ways about us from our vehicles, but most of them in the future they will learn from your vehicle. So they don't waste time worrying about their mistakes. They take every mistake and find out what caused that mistake.
Where
it won't happen again.
Right. What the mismatch was. What the misinformation was on, because there was either more weakness in the mind of the next level or more difficulty in the vehicle than was foreseen at the outset of the task. The next level does not know everything because they can't zero down into everything. You understand that? It's just like humans don't know everything about dogs and cats and mice that they work with, experiments and so forth. And but they learn from all of those. And like T said, they will reevaluate why that vehicle and that mind couldn't, as a pair, accomplish the task.
Since so many of you were capable of doing it, then it's given them an awful lot of information.
They always work on the assessment or work on the idea at the outset, just like we can't think any other way. And you might see that there's you could think, we were using the word contradiction the other day, but not that it's contradictory, but we have to always work on the idea that it can work. And we feel like when it was assigned, they felt like it could work. That we always, when we send you on a task, we feel like that task can work. And yet, you may not be able to accomplish that task at that time. And so then we have to study what happened. Was the task too difficult, or was the individual that was sent on the task not up to it? Where was the imbalance, the mismatch? Sunodi?
I had a question that came up about things happening in 71. If there might have been things that happened maybe before that. Like the vehicle might have had thoughts or memories about thoughts from very early times regarding doing something like this. And he had talked about how the mind might have been close by, and I wondered would that line have
Can you be specific?
just thoughts about when it grew up it would have to leave its parents and it wished that its parents were mean because then I wouldn't have to feel bad about it. And then when Nixon's sister was born, thinking, oh good, that'll make it easier, and then I have to leave. And thinking, not knowing what it was for, but that it was very weak and something
At 6?
Well,
At age 6?
Before 6, and 6 I remember was when the sister was born and had a specific thought of that would be helpful. And also thinking about going up into the sky, being
with other humans watching, and
See, we don't know whether or not the vehicle had any tutoring prior to your taking it.
Right.
It's very likely that it did. You know what I mean by that?
Well,
Person contact.
Well, T and I have even talked about its possibility that next level, through technical means that they have available to them, might have nurtured your vehicles, preparing them for you. And in other words, that they might have had an association with certain ones of them for some period of time, preparing them for you. Now, and those vehicles would sense that. They could feel that, and they might even think they know certain aspects of what's going to happen just by that unconscious sensing of that. We've talked about, because we don't know the reason we're confused by it is because we don't know the technical means that the next level has of doing such a thing as that. But many times it has made sense to us that your vehicles were, that somebody or some means was watching them and caring for them and even putting them through certain little things, preparing for your entry, so that it wouldn't be too difficult when the time occurred.
Just think how bad it would be if they hadn't helped you. So difficult.
We may later learn that you took entrance sooner, but for now we don't feel that way. We don't think that you took entrance at birth. We think that it was much later, that it wasn't too many years before you met us. But that doesn't mean that your vehicle was just like every other vehicle prior to that time, that it didn't have some special attention and some tending. Probably had to be some pretty careful examination of the vehicle and seeing that it could handle it. We don't know.
Well, see, the next level isn't going to leave everything to chance. In other words, they're going to prepare the way, and then once we get into the actual task, then that's different. That's a different story. But prior to that, they will, in my mind, and this is just logic, it's the way I'm thinking, that it's like they would prepare your vehicle and then let your mind come in and you do your task, because they're not going to have a failure. In other words, this task is going to work.
And too much was
That's
put
how
into it.
positive they are, because it has to happen. And they're not going to leave it to human vehicles and a mind of the next level to come into that little vehicle and expect that mind to do it by itself. They don't put you through that. And so in my mind, it sounds to me like that they have nurtured these vehicles all along. Now, whether or not you have been into them, I don't believe, like right now we're subject to change anytime we get better knowledge, but it seems to me like you did not come in from the very beginning. It's too much waste of manpower. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we didn't come into our vehicles, our whole mind, from the very beginning.
But we feel like we had a closer, that we were like the life force. Enough of the mind was there to sustain the vehicles. Didn't sustain them very well because they weren't very healthy. And we had to do a lot more homework with the vehicles, because we had to take vehicles that were vintage of the same that your vehicles were vintage of, if you understand what we're saying, and yet we had to take them twice as far. You understand that? Huh?
Oh, you were lucky you got younger.
What?
You mean like the same generation?
Yes, the same part, the same era of primitivism. our vehicles are the same era of primitivism. Yours even generation more primitive than a lot of your vehicles, and yet we had to take them twice as far in what they had to go through. So it took a lot of care, and they still didn't handle it very well.
Now, while we're talking, can you all understand? Can you feel like this is right?
Yeah.
In other words, because this is what we want you to get more mind in, so when we talk to you, you can feel that it's right and understand it.
We want you to get to where we're talking mind to mind instead of words to words in your
Vehicle. Mind the vehicle.
Somebody?
Ever since the meeting yesterday, I mentioned this to you a while back about thinking that I might have been in a police practice in January 1960, and then it seemed like things started falling apart for me at that time, but the remembrance of it was like I was sitting at a table with another lady, and we went just completely out. It was broad daylight. It was 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and we were taken out of the house. I could be wrong, but I remember her eyes. I was looking at her, and all of a sudden, it was another face looking at me. And we were taken out of the house, I guess, and I don't know about her. But when I woke up, I was sitting in the same place, and she was shaking her head, and she said, "What happened?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, but I think I was talking to Jesus."
That's the way you responded.
That was my
How long?
I was in a cloud, and we don't know how long it lasted. We were both out of it, but
Like an hour.
well, I'd say about 40.
What time was it when you looked at the clock? Because you said it was 10 o'clock in the morning.
Well, it was approximately 10. I didn't look at the clock, but that's just about the time we sat down at the table.
Oh, I see.
Of course, this is what you're relating to us now is impressions made upon the brain and the mind of the vehicle. And it does not mean that Sam Odie was in the vehicle. This still could have been part of the preparation of that vehicle to receive Sam Odie. We might find that crazy things went on, and you don't even know that you didn't have some little implant in order to make it possible for you to come in to that vehicle. We don't know what occurred, and it'll be fun finding out. But we're not supposed to know. But it doesn't hurt us to sit and talk like this about it, as long as we know that we don't know, that we're just speculating, if you can understand that.
In 1972, I had a dream, and I woke up. What happened in the dream was I was going down the freeway, the 4-lane freeway, and the cars were just cracking up all over. They were wrecking themselves, running into each other. And I ran up to this one car, and I mentioned to the man, I said, "Well, don't you see what you're doing to your car? You're just tearing your car all apart." He said, "Yeah, I know. Okay." And so I thought, well, he must not care about his car at all, or they don't care. And so I just kept on down the highway, and pretty soon it ended. It said freeway ends, and I went into it, and on this path, and I traveled down the path quite a ways, and there were people that came onto the path behind me, and when I got to the clearing at the end of the pathway, there were individuals that were in gray, shiny skin, and they were naked, but you couldn't tell what they were, but they had bulgy skin, or like muscles all over. And I was the only one that could see them. These people behind me, I'd say, "Hey, look." And every time they looked, the people would get behind trees. And so when the people behind me left, I was still standing at the edge of the clearing, and they all stepped out, and they unzipped their skins and took them off, and there was no male nor female there, but they were all just beautiful. But I woke up, and I ran through the house, and I was telling everybody, "I know what we've got to do. We've got to change just like Jesus did."
That's interesting.
That's
That
the
was
impression. You picked up on the thoughts of the task with the head part. Now, it might have been that your mind during the rest of that vehicle, I know it might have been that the mind of the vehicle during the rest of the vehicle had a certain laboratory experience in preparation, because that could have happened. Right, Sody?
Well, something similar happened to me, like Sonodi, when I was somewhere between 6 and 8 years old. A little lady came to our house, and we had just a very small house and very meager means. But she was cold, and she was trying to sell something, and my mother said, "Well, come on in, you look cold, and sit down here and have something to eat." And she gave her some oatmeal. And I remember sitting there watching this person and wondering why she was here. And as soon as she walked out the door, you know, this little vehicle looked and said to myself, "I think Jesus was just here." You know, that's the way I interpreted that person, that incident, because it made such an impression on my mind for some reason. And it wasn't unusual for my mother to be that way, but this was just, you know, a happenstance in my life.
Like a mall in the night picture.
Right. And then when I got to be around 12, I had this strong feeling that I should become a missionary, and started studying some of the things that a minister had helped me with, and then I went to a church meeting.
No, wait a minute. The vehicle.
The vehicle, yes. And then this vehicle went to a church meeting, and in the middle of this meeting, a bright light just appeared above everyone else, and I was the only one, of course, that saw it. And then after that, I had this feeling that I had to be about my Father's work, and I carried that with me from then on. And when I went to nursing training, it came back again very strong. I must be about my Father's work and help wherever I can.
See, it could have been your mind that's coming in. But I still
Or
think
it could have
it's
been preparation of the vehicle. It also could have been even awakening of the mind of the vehicle from its previous commitment in a previous lifetime, its previous commitment to serving its Heavenly Father. Do you follow that? So you don't know what those things are, and we don't really want to. We don't want to start everybody now relating all your childhood experiences. We want to get to the more current questions. Excuse me.
I would like to ask some of you how many of you felt like you had a strong connection with your Heavenly Father during your lifetime. See, that's probably why a lot of the vehicles were picked. Not that there was anything wrong with the ones of you who didn't feel that way, but I think...
Now, the ones that didn't raise your hands, did you feel like you had some connection with something? Like it didn't, the vehicle may not have translated it to your Heavenly Father.
But
You see what we're saying?
Okay, see, this is... I can't help but believe that you all were conditioned. When you look at it, doesn't it make sense that Sixth Level isn't going to fail?
I feel like two things happened. Not only was the vehicle conditioned, but I feel like you chose a vehicle who had also inherited the experiences of the mind of that vehicle from previous lifetimes. It was set up. In other words, it may be a very simple task for the next level to have prepared the mind of your vehicle even generations prior to this vehicle, so that when the mind of that vehicle came into this vehicle, it was even more prepared for your entry in that way.
You know, the vehicle was prepared back in Moses'
Yeah,
day.
that's right. That's right, and that's right. We can even look at the record and know that there have been preparations in vehicles a number of times. But it may have even been more recent than that. A farmer doesn't get a cotton crop, or maybe does cotton, but a lot of crops don't happen first season. It takes several generations, and the same thing may have been in the preparation of the mind of your vehicle. We don't know.
City?
Stop me if this is an inappropriate question, but I was thinking about it some more since the things you shared last night, and it just seems like those experiences you talked about, and I know that we've had, everyone's probably had them, even though we haven't talked about them, but like too many things happen that seemed that weren't coincidence, and it seemed something that, okay, this might be right, but like T and Doe were like prepared for the task, and you met some period of time before, and then you knew what you had to do, and can't help but wonder if a lot of us who are here met someone, and some are still here, and some aren't, who we had a strong relationship with for some time before we met up with what we're doing. And I thought about check partners, and it just seemed, with the next level send my mind down here and say, you go get to that vehicle, and then you do all this by yourself, or would they send down and say, you're supposed to meet with this other mind, who's your check partner, together you're to go find your teachers. And I just, it might not be the right question at all, but I just was wondering about that.
I think if you come in with somebody, you're talking about coming into the group with somebody, I think it's a coincidence. I don't know that they would lead you into a relationship with somebody.
No, it's possible that the two minds who were given vehicles to take might have been put in circumstances where unconsciously they recognized what they had to do together, and therefore they were unconsciously drawn together. That's possible, but we don't feel that you were given the idea of finding a check partner. Do you follow that? Several of you who are sitting here you had relationships with someone else in this room, and some who are no longer in the class. But we don't feel that was a check partner kind of thing. It's that unconsciously there was an attraction, and it translated probably in some cases into physical attractions. And because otherwise, in most cases, the two individuals who came into the class, one of them wouldn't be here. Do you see what we're saying? If it had been anything other than that. Because we don't think that you could exist in the class, certainly not this long in the class, if you had been just a human attracted to someone who had this task. But we still don't feel like it was designed on a check partner relationship.
Rudy?
You said the other night seemed to really help me, because I know before rejoining with the group, I felt like my pulling was a lot stronger than it had been since rejoining. I felt like once I kind of got back with the group, it was like, oh gosh, here I am, now I can relax. And my vehicle, I guess, almost had me conned into thinking that pulling was no longer something that was appropriate.
Well, in a sense, it wasn't, because you had so much else to learn, and so many things to fall into, and it's been very appropriate now for us to say that your pulling has to be increased beyond just filling in little blanks of puzzles. It has to be increased to the degree of our last meeting. But we can see how you felt that way, and it was your pulling while you were separate from the class that found you back in the class.
Well, the thing of it is, when you were out away from the class, your idea of pulling was different.
That's right.
In other words, you thought you were pulling in talking to the next level. You didn't know that you were pulling on your own mind. And this is what you're doing now.
It's pulling on your own mind.
You're not pulling to the next level at all. You know that, right?
Right. You're sucking your own mind through.
So that's your understanding of pulling is different than what it was back then, but it got you back quickly.
Sure did.
The next level 9 did.
The other part of that was, on the last tape, you mentioned that, in Jerody's, something like, I may be wrong, in Jerody's case, his mind was not as strongly in it.
Was that what?
His mind was not as strongly in as compared to, I guess, the rest of the class. Was that in reference to the fact that being away from your teachers, your mind cannot come in as strongly as...
I don't think that's what we said.
What did we say?
What was it, Jenny?
Well, I could be wrong, but, it was the time when you were trying, if I remember what you're talking about, when they were trying to compare if you've had as much time, if the vehicle had as much time in the classroom as out of the classroom. I could be wrong. I think what you said was that, Jerody came the closest to being half and half, but you said that during part of that time, he wasn't as closely associated with the classroom. So you weren't sure if that really counted as being, 10 years or 9 years and 9
Right.
years.
But your vehicle put you down in misinterpreting that, because we didn't say that.
I didn't know what you're
I
talking
figured that
about.
I was trying to understand, the meaning tonight, because it still isn't clear right now, that, being with your teachers brings out your mind more.
Well, we were just for fun. It had no real significance. Just for fun, we were kind of getting an idea of how much time individuals had been in the class and how much time their vehicles had been alive prior to the class. And Jerody's said it was almost equal, but we said it wasn't equal. In other words, for the other class members, it wasn't equal because they had lived longer years prior to class than they had been in class. Do you see what we're saying? And we said if Jerody had been in the class, then the very first ones were in the class, it would have been almost equal. But we said that you're more in line with the rest of them as far as time in the class in relationship to time out of the class, percentage-wise, because of the time you were not with the class. Can you follow that?
Yeah.
That's all we were saying.
Now,
And it has no significance, so don't think about it again.
now, being with the teachers did have an advantage over not being with them,
That's right.
because they had a concentrated effort on our part to bring their minds in more, where you all just did it whenever you had the time to do it.
In other words,
If
you
it's
didn't
all
have us
the time.
coming to you constantly and stimulating you and working with you, but
You're-
we still got the instruction to involve you all in the experiment that we involved you in. And so it was, even though they had an advantage in a way, you had an advantage of another experiment.
Right.
And you must have needed, or it must have been something that the next level wanted to see the result of what would occur in that period of separation.
I think it was to give you all more strength, a concentrated strength, because your effort to get strength to continue without anyone helping you, it had to be stronger
Yeah.
than what others had experienced. And you all survived, and which gave you extra strength. So I think you can look back, and we don't want you to look back, but I think you can look back without looking back and realize that it did give you strength.
I'll tell you something, that the thought that this is just pure speculation. We're just sharing some crazy thoughts. But the thought entered my mind, or has on several occasions, that those who work with us are our minds outside of these vehicles, minds that we don't have too much knowledge of, that there was an awareness. Let's say that, now I'm just playing a mental game, okay? Let's say that...
It's a game.
Huh?
It's a game.
It's a mental game. It's a mental game. Let's say that our minds or those helping us could foresee a certain waning period with certain vehicles, like tensile strength, like that a certain time element of subjection to the class might have caused a weakening period, and they would have lost control of the vehicle. And so the next level said, well, let's try with these individuals, let's try it two ways. Let's leave some who have that tensile strength weakness that's going to arrive after X number of months of forward motion. Let's let some of them go separate and try to strengthen so that when they come back, they will have if they come back, they will have survived that waning period. Others who have that waning tendency coming up because of their relationship with their vehicle, let's leave them in the class and see what happens to them. And some are lost. In other words, I have wondered many times if some of the, let's say, when you talk about matching next level minds with vehicles, what we were talking about earlier, the strength of the mind and the resistance of the vehicles. And it's possible that they could see that certain ones were at certain periods going to meet with very questionable resistance. And they thought, well, let's try it two ways so that we'll know in the future how to handle this kind of resistance. Now, I'm still playing a game because only the thought has occurred. I don't know if there's any validity to it. And it could have been that some who had that questionable period coming were left in the class to see how it was handled if they were in the class, and some were put outside the class to see what the end result would be. Now, we don't know if the percentages of those who were left in the class and who had that resistance weakness, if the survival rate was greater from those who were put outside the class. We don't know that because it hasn't been brought into our conscious mind. We have no way of evaluating it. Do you follow that thinking? Already?
I thought you were about to answer one part of the question I had. Before I ask that, I want to ask another one first, and that is when we were
Only two.
when we were first trying to teach the vehicles to overcome the need for sleep and for rest. I forget the craft we were in, but I believe it was at that time you told us that we had monitors, that we were being monitored, and that there were actually members of the next level in our presence at that time. I remember Cerrone trying to turn around and laugh and catch them.
Never caught one?
And, unnecessary.
Bandera Road.
Okay. I wondered if at that time, when you explained to us how you were at one time addressing the minds of the vehicles as graduates to the next level, if when you told us we were being monitored at that time, was that by our next level minds being there, or is it actually older members in our presence?
Well, see, we've always felt like you've been monitored.
Right.
We have understood it in different ways. We, for a time, we didn't know how you were being monitored, but we've always known you've been
Right
monitored.
now you're being monitored.
And we don't know if you're monitored because some are capable of being outside of vehicles and monitoring, or if they have technical devices that permit them to monitor. But we know that you're being monitored. We feel like just as you have records of everything that you do in the procedures here, we feel like the next level is going to have in their laboratory records of everything that transpired. And your face might turn red at times. And but we don't know the method. And at different times we have guessed at what that method might have been in different ways.
I don't believe that you have the facilities to see them. In other words, there's something preventing you from seeing them with these vehicles.
Should they be present in a form that you might consider a member of the next level?
That doesn't mean that you can't grow to see them. as you get more mind in, because you might, and I'm just speculating, you
We
might
have to think this
you
way.
might grow as you get more mind in, where you have it more under control of the vehicle under more control. Then I don't know why you wouldn't see the next level.
If they are present
If
in
they
that
are
way.
Right.
Do you see why we have to think this way? Because it's the positive way of turning every stone. Do you understand that? In other words, we have to, everything that we look at it as if, well, it's possible if we continue to raise our vibrations that if there is someone present, that we will grow to see them. If we ever thought that it isn't possible and we wouldn't grow to see them, then if it were so, we would be blinding ourselves. Do you see that? Because we would not believe that it were there, therefore we would not open that door. So we have to approach that in the way they started a garden was a boom. Can you see that? But I can't imagine anybody coming up with it just happened that there was just a boom.
Oh, just all that work involved. All you have to do is just say boom. It happened. You'll laugh at that when you get back. Hey, Rudy?
Oh, what you were saying about growing to see spacecraft reminds me of, well, something that I don't know if it makes any sense, but there's a lot of validity to that. But in the Old Testament, there's an old story about either Elijah or Elisha had a servant who was working with him, learning fixing the trade. And at the time, the little town they were in was under siege by some army. And the servant would drill words they were going to be killed and wanted to know how in the world anybody was going to save them. And Elisha said, well, the Lord is going to save us. And the little servant being, not knowing anything, he says, well, how? I don't think he's going to save us. And the little servant being, not knowing anything, he says, well, how? I don't see anybody who's going to fight this army. So Elisha prayed to have the little boy's eyes opened, and when they were opened, he said he looked around at the mountains, and there were chariots of fire everywhere, or, the clouds of light everywhere, which made me think of them having the ability to open vehicles.
Just think, once you get yourself rid, when you rid your vehicle of all the human characteristics, and you have overcome you have done your task, meaning you have overcome any reactions from your strain, you can't help but be a pure mind of the next level.
Well, you got to state that again for me, because maybe I don't understand, because I don't see how the vehicle will be rid of all of its character under control. But
okay. Well, I guess when I'm talking about rid, I mean under control.
Okay.
In other words, you will forever feel something, from the strain. But I'm talking about being under control. And it's like pushing your head completely out of the chrysalis, where you can see something besides what you're looking at. Do you understand that? And it's like second sight, so to speak. But it's the pure mind being able to control the vehicle enough that it is in control. The mind is in control. Do you follow that? Does that make sense?
now I feel a heaviness come in from what T, as a result of what T has said. Maybe it's just what I feel, but I feel like, oh goodness, if we have to wait until that in comparison to where we have gone already, then T and O will be gone and we will be old and gray. And,
well, I don't believe it. I feel like you all have made an awful lot of progress just since we've been in Dallas. And I'm not talking about where you don't feel anything. Let's say that someone comes to you and says something to you in a negative way, and you feel that negativism, and you fight off having a negative response, but you do not give a negative response. That's the kind of control. If you have sensuality attack you, if you do not give in to it, you are under control. This is what I'm talking about. But it's these little slips that you want to prevent from having happen. And all of the things that we have taught you. So you shouldn't feel heaviness because of that. Because in my mind, now looking at it from where I'm sitting, I felt good about it, what I said, because I felt like now you know what to do in order to be able to see. You see what I'm saying? So
I think what I might have felt is, and it was probably a trick that my vehicle plays on me, is that no matter what the degree of control that I have, I don't feel like I have much control. You follow what I'm saying? And the idea of perfect control seems so distant from me because I'm so disappointed in my degree of control. Now, funny thing is, but I also know that when T and I are working together, and I will feel moments of lack of control, and I will express them to T, and she'll say, "You didn't have any lack of control." Do you know what I'm saying? And even though I would have registered it lack of control, because I felt like since I dealt with something that I was registering lack of control. But if T was not aware that I was dealing with something, then I had control. And many times it has encouraged me a great deal for T to remind me at times that I thought I had no control, of saying, you had control, because I wasn't aware of what you're doing. And T would be aware of it. Do you see what I'm saying? And feel it or sense it if I wasn't controlling it. I'm just bringing this up to add to what T has said, because I don't want your vehicle to send you, because you're different degrees of judgment of what control is, let it be an element of discouragement to you.
You know, now that I think about it, I don't think that that's all of it. In other words, and I'm not trying to come back to make you feel good, because I feel like that it isn't time to see the next level more than getting where we're not under control. Because I still think that the vehicle prevents us from seeing the next level. But I don't know that it's getting rid of the flaws in the vehicle. You know what I'm saying? I think it has to be a time.
And it may be even their instruments that are preventing your seeing them. In other words, it might even be that at a given time, when they see your work is completed, that they push a button which disengages the inhibiting factor of your vehicle from seeing them. Mm-hmm. We don't know that isn't a possibility. Do you understand that? Do you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Wow, Odie?
I don't know what I'm feeling. I might be wrong by it, because I realize that I do have a lot more work to do. For all of us as a class, I'm sure we do have a lot more work to do. But I started feeling like we're on the threshold of something. Especially since yesterday, it's been to the fore. That I feel a lot closer. I don't know, to the next level or just to my own next level mind. But if I understood... No,
because if your next level mind is not talking, it's closer to other members of the next level, not next level, not closer to...
If I understood what we were talking about last night, the first part of the class, from campground day to Blackhawk, or whatever that part of the class was, the lessons were primarily for the mind of the vehicle.
Well, I want to correct a little bit of that, because we feel like we were talking to your next level minds prior to Blackhawk. Okay? But at Blackhawk was when it was time for us to recognize it. It might have been damaging to you, to your development program, to know that prior to that. In other words, there was a given time when we felt like we were talking more to the mind of the vehicle in order to get its cooperation and letting more next level mind come in. And we do not know where the time was when we were talking then more. And it doesn't matter because it was kind of mixed. Because in our eyes, we were talking to the next level mind all the time, even though it might have been only the mind of the vehicle capable of hearing it. And in order to let next level mind make its entrance. But I didn't want, and I'm glad you brought this up, because I did not want to leave you with the impression that it was Blackhawk that your next level mind entered. I was just using that as an illustration of how there is no contradictions. Things are appropriate at the time, and they are truth for the time. And then as we see more, we see that what was appropriate for time before is no longer appropriate for now. But go ahead.
Okay, so we don't know, and I don't know when it wasn't cut and dried up here with the vehicle and here with the mind, but it started out where the mind was learning sort of a lot of our lessons and so forth. The information we were receiving was for the mind of the vehicle. I don't know, maybe it'll be clear when I get the whole thing. And then after that point, as the mind started coming in more, it was like we were doing another task. Well, the way I feel right now is, if I'm understanding right, is that we're doing two tasks. The mind of the vehicle is doing one task, following procedures, and this is the picture I was getting yesterday, maybe when you're talking about some of us thought we were doing right by following procedures and trying to do everything in the most right way, our conduct and so forth. And that was right. That's what the mind of the vehicle is working on.
Obedient to. It's obedient to.
And now we're realizing that the task of the next level mind is something different. And it happens simultaneously.
That's right. It's greater than that. That the task of the next level mind is greater than that. That it's like now you can give that over. You can give it. This isn't accurate, but it's as if you're saying, now I can give some of that adherence to procedures and so forth over to my cooperative house here, and the mind of my cooperative house who has learned to do those things, because I'm going to concentrate on pulling. You see what we're saying? But you've got to keep one eye on seeing that house does its duty. Dan Sody?
Well, I think this was one of the things I had last night in the first session, and that is, in order to make the vehicle go through its paces and do all the things on time in the right way, I felt like I had to be pulling in the very way that you said were pulling. In other words, otherwise I didn't accomplish the routine.
Well, that's true.
And it's like I couldn't visualize.
Okay.
So yes,
Okay, but there's a different kind of pulling that it's time to concentrate on. It's just that you had identified it in that way, and it's perfectly accurate as as we can be, to think of that it took pulling to maintain countenance and maintain my tasks, and it's perfectly right to think that way. But we also feel like it's time now for an a task over and above that of pulling, one that's going on in the back of your mind greater than what was going on just to sustain procedures and attitude and countenance. That you've learned to do, you should have by now learned to maintain that and sustain that. And we're saying, okay, on one hand can do that, and let's get this other hand over here working on pulling for how can we move more quickly, how can we accelerate more quickly. That just because this hand is pulling in order to do those things isn't necessarily all that it takes to be moving at the greatest possible accelerated pace.
I guess to me, even those questions were, I may be wrong, maybe I'm just
thinking that this was the case, were so much a part of the routine that I established, of even
But
those
you don't need to be that hung up on it.
Right.
You don't need to be that,
You haven't done any wrong.
no,
Now.
yeah, but see, it's something that's reluctant. It's like I had it all sorted out, and this is disturbing to me
Well,
because
see,
it's,
you've done what you were
Yeah.
supposed to do. Now you ought to be able to let your vehicle follow through on the procedures
on
and
those
everything. If you
responsibilities,
do
the mind of
something
the
else.
vehicle.
No, I'm not talking about that level of thing. I'm just saying that the other part was incorporated into it.
See, what? Do you think there was something wrong or something that you were doing wrong?
But is there some way that you were offended by
Huh?
this?
No, it's just that I'm feeling I'm trying to want to be doing something different now, and I'm not
You're doing the same thing.
what it is I'm supposed to do.
Well,
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
More often.
In other words, what we want you to do is when you listen to the tapes, listen to them in a different way. Try to understand what we're saying and try to feel what we're talking about. And in the process, questions ought to come up.
right, we know clearly, what we defined the difference yesterday was that we used to have to go off in our pulling, bring in questions and answers, and come feed you for next movement. And we want now your pulling to bring in your questions, to bring in answers. We want you to take something, to rise to be able to think on a level of bringing in some of those questions that will bring in the right answers. Because it's like, Dan Sodi, we don't know, I don't mean just Dan Sodi, all of you, we don't know that that one of the main things that's happening here isn't, and this, we've said this before, and it's a downer to some of you, but it could be preparation for you to